video, we're going to review the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Smith and Wesson J-frame. So starting with the good, the Smith and Wesson J-frame has probably more grip options out there from the aftermarket than any other revolver on the market. So most J-frames are going to ship with just the standard rubber grip, and honestly it works really well. I really like the stock option. They also have this other stock grip right here, which you can see, which is a little bit longer, gives you a full grip with the hand if you want a little more leverage on the gun, but it's not going to be quite as concealable. These grips do a decent job of handling recoil, but if those don't work for you, lots of other options out there. If you guys want to see a full video just on Smith and Wesson J-frame grips, let us know in the comments down below, but we're going to gloss over the main features of some of the more prominent grips out there. So VZ grips. The Smith and Wesson 360 right here, I've put VZ grips on. They're G10. They work pretty well. They've got different profiles on their website. You can see that gun over my right shoulder also has a set of VZ grips. Personally, I like them quite a bit, but I think they're better off for more experienced shooters that know how to really grip the gun tight so that it doesn't knock around your hand a lot. They're not going to be as forgiving as rubber grips. Now another popular option are Hogue grips. So those are going to come in two main varieties. Got the Hogue mono grip right here, and then we have the Hogue Bantam grip. The Bantam is pretty much a copy of the stock Smith & Wesson grip, except for the material that Hogue uses a little bit tackier than what Smith & Wesson uses. So I actually prefer the Smith & Wesson grips. Now these Hogue mono grips for the Smith & Wesson J-frame are absolutely huge. You can see they fill up my entire hand. They're really hard to conceal if you don't have a great holster, and they're so big, you might want to carry a different gun than the J-frame if you're planning on using these grips. But they make even this Smith & Wesson 360, which has a lot of felt recoil because it's really light, feel like a 22 when it has these grips on it. So Pachmayr is another option, and actually they make my favorite grip for the Smith & Wesson J-frame. We'll start with their Diamond Pro grip. This is a very large grip, hard to conceal, but it's got a lot of good padding in here. So it's pretty darn good if you're gonna shoot 357 Magnum or 38 plus P through one of the lighter Smith & Wesson J-frames. If you're really recoil sensitive, great grip option. Same for their Compact grip. Now this Compact grip, big, doesn't conceal well, but again, does help mitigate recoil, and it really fills your hand up. So if you have larger hands, this might be an option you want to consider. Now, my favorite grip is this Compact Pro. It's a lot smaller, just almost gives you a full grip on the J-frame, but it still conceals really well. Great option. That's probably what I'm going to put on my Smith & Wesson 640 Pro, which I end up carrying a decent bit. Last of the grips is you have the Pachmayr Guardian. The Guardian is special and unique because it has this little button right here. When you press, that little extension comes out and allows you to get a full grip on the gun while only having a smaller profile when you're carrying it concealed. So cool little option, but it's not going to do much for recoil because it's hard plastic, and just something you might want to take into consideration if you're recoil sensitive. One cool thing about the J-frame is there's a lot of grips on the market that have been discontinued, which can be kind of fun to hunt for these on eBay, Numeric gun parts, a bunch of different places. But like I've got these Uncle Mike's grips right here, and these are pretty much the same as the Smith & Wesson stock grips. The only difference is they're cut and relieved up higher so they'll work better with speed loaders. Crimson Trace has a full line of grips for the Smith & Wesson J-frame. We can go over those in depth in a later video if you guys would like us to. Let us know down in the comments if that's something you want us to cover. So another good part about the Smith & Wesson J-frame, pretty much any revolver, is maintenance. These guns tend to do very well from neglect, but they don't do well with abuse. But to keep them from being abused, all you really have to do is run a bore snake through the barrel, through the cylinders, clean that out pretty well, and then get a brush to brush down the star, the ejector rod, the forcing cone, just the main parts that are going to get a lot of carbon buildup, potentially lead fat buildup in the gun itself. Do that, put a little lube on it, and the revolver is going to treat you well. The Smith & Wesson J-frame is obviously going to be best known for concealed carry gun, so how does it actually carry? That's going to depend on multiple factors. What Smith & Wesson J-frame you're carrying, how much does it weigh, what holster are you using, what belt are you using, and what clothing are you wearing. So the Smith and Wesson J-frame is made in 3 different main frame sizes. You have the scandium frames, the aluminum frames, and then the stainless steel and steel frames. All different frame sizes, which is going to make it more difficult for holster fit. And on top of that, you have different barrel shroud shapes, which further affects that. The Icon 2.0, our holster, is designed to accommodate most of these. We have a complete list up on our website, and other Kydex holsters that do the same thing are the Darkstar Gear holster and the Filster City Special. So, but most Kydex J-frame holsters out there on the market are only going to fit, you know, the 637, 442, and 642 series of guns, which is the aluminum Airweight series. They're not going to fit the scandium or the stainless steel guns. So that is a downside of the Smith and Wesson J-frame. Depending on which gun you get, finding the right holster option could be more difficult if one of the holsters I mentioned doesn't work for you. So weight's really important when you're carrying concealed. Like I'm dressed right now, I'm wearing a belt, I can carry pretty much any weight of gun I want. But if I'm throwing on athletic shorts and trying to go for a run, weight really starts to matter, because then I'm not gonna have a belt on, and I'm also moving a lot. I don't want that extra weight on my person. So the Smith and Wesson J-frame is made in a scandium frame, which is super light. They even have titanium cylinders for some of those guns, which make the guns really not fun to fire, but they are super lightweight. Then you have your Airweights, which come in just under a pound. Those are reasonable to fire, but they're also not super fun. Then you have your steel guns, which are frankly a joy to shoot. They're really easy to shoot with the right ammo. So how does the gun draw? The gun and how it draws is really going to depend on your holster, how you've got it set up as far as angle, how much of the grip is exposed, as well as what grip you're using. So if you have something that's grippier, like we mentioned before with these Hogue grips, you're going to want to wrap them in goon tape so you can get your hand in between the body and the gun quicker. If you're carrying the gun in the pocket, you might have to go with a set of smaller grips that you can get your entire hand in that pocket. You might have to change your pants because the profile of your pocket may not work. These are all things you've got to take into consideration when you're thinking about drawing the gun. The J-frame revolvers can conceal really well. They can even conceal better than guns like the Ruger LCP, which is significantly smaller, but it's got a more squared off shape of the grip. So these guns shoot like bigger guns and conceal like smaller guns. That's the advantage of a revolver. But if you put a large grip on these guns, you start losing some of that advantage. Again, that's going to come a lot down to your body type, your holster setup, just how everything works for you in particular. So are the Smith and Wesson J-frames comfortable to carry? The Smith and Wesson J-frames are pretty darn comfortable to carry because most of the weight sits below the belt line, and that does a lot to increase comfort. If you've got belts sitting above the belt line, the gun is going to want to kick out away from your body, becoming less concealable and pushing the muzzle into your groin. So get a good holster like our Icon 2.0. It's got very rounded edges. It's going to sit nice and comfortably against your body. It's got that wing that'll tuck the grip in, and it's just a great setup. It's also got a wide clip, so if you're carrying with athletic clothing, has a lot more support than most of your other normal holsters with regular clips. Enough talking about the gun, let's go see how it actually shoots. So the Smith and Wesson J-frame has more loading options than any other revolver out there. You've got the jet loaders, you got Safariland Comp 1s, the Speed Bs, Packmeyer, 5-star, HKS, plus the Zeta 6 speed strips, all different kinds of options. Personally, the jet loader is my favorite by far. It's the largest, easiest to grab out of the pocket, just the most positive getting it into the gun, and it seems to work the best with the majority of grip options. Safariland Comp 1 is right up there, but you really have to make sure you have the right grips on the gun for it to work well. Not a fan of the Speed Bs because I don't trust the reliability. I think the rounds will probably fall out if you're going to carry it in the pocket. It'd be great for competition though if you're shooting at some other form of revolver. HKS, I don't like the direction that the knob turns, but if you can deal with that, it's definitely a great little speed loader. Now the 5-star, I don't like the way that they shake, but I love the direction the knob turns, so pretty darn easy to use. So within the different weights of revolvers, we've got pretty much every, we've got the scandium here, we've got the aluminum alloy, and then we've got the stainless steel. All of these have either a hammerless option or a double action, single action option, like this gun right here. So you can either cock the hammer and shoot, or And with that, one thing about the Smith & Wesson, you can see those two rounds are sticking out right there. You can easily pull those out and load two back in the gun. So I'm gonna shoot this full cylinder into a target so we can see what it looks like. And I'm gonna do the same with the aluminum alloy, which is a little bit heavier, and then the stainless steel gun. Problem is with those chambers, it is nice to be able to pluck those rounds out, but they're more likely to stick when you go to eject. So right here we have the aluminum gun. Man, I love the way these things shoot. And here, last but not least, we got the stainless steel. So let's go up and take a look at these targets. We shot the scandium gun. As you can see, everything's in the A, but it's a little bit larger of a group. Now when we move over here to the 442, that gun just shoots well for me. The sights aren't that great, has a little more recoil than the stainless gun, but it just works. Here we have the stainless 640 Pro, the most expensive and heaviest gun of the lot, and for me, it didn't shoot better than the others, but for the average shooter who isn't used to the recoil of a revolver, this gun is probably actually going to be the easiest to shoot. The sights are the most traditional as well. So the triggers on these guns tend to all be pretty similar. The performance center guns usually are a little bit lighter and feel a little bit smoother. Now, another good part about this gun is the reliability, at least on these centerfire models. And this is where we move to the bad. The reliability on the rimfire guns just isn't there. Unfortunately, that's reality. If you want a good rimfire gun, get a Ruger LCR. Now let's move back to the truck and talk about the rest of the bad, and finally, the ugly. So now that we've just shot these guns, one thing that really sticks out is the subpar sights. Now, the Smith & Wesson J-frame is honestly about on par with every other revolver out there for its sights, and it's got 3 different sight options, which we'll go over, but revolver sights just aren't that good. So you've got my favorite, which is the Smith & Wesson 640 with the dovetailed sights. They're way too thick though. They're just, if they were on a semi-automatic, we'd be talking about how bad they are, but on a revolver, they seem really good just because they're better than everything else. It's only in comparison. They suck if you're comparing them to semi-automatic sights. Then you have like the Smith & Wesson 360, which has a pinned on front sight. And that gives you a couple options. You can switch out the front blades, but you have no way to adjust your elevation. The rear trough is gonna be really narrow, really hard to see through. You can shoot these guns all right, but you're not gonna be super precise with them. One thing I do like about the Smith & Wesson's rear sight picture is it is more of a U-notch than a squared off notch. So that tends to work a little bit better for me, at least on target, than other options like the Taurus 856 series. Now, worst is the Smith & Wesson 642 and 442, which have these milled on front sights. All you can really do with these is paint the front sight with some sort of paint. And that works all right, but it works better on the 442 series, which is black. If you have one of the stainless guns look better in my opinion, but when you're looking down the sights, it's much harder to pick those up, especially in daylight, and it doesn't give you an advantage in low light either. The silver guns, much harder to get a good sight picture. So another really bad thing about the Smith & Wesson J-frame is it doesn't come in as many caliber options as the Taurus small frame guns or the Ruger LCR. Smith & Wesson is really slacking here. And by that, I mean they don't make it in the 327 Magnum or a 32 H&R, at least in current production guns. They have made these guns in the past, but they go for $1,500 to $2,000 on Gunbroker when you can find them. And in my opinion, it's not worth the money for that. So I really wish they had a few more caliber options. They do have the 22s, the 22 Magnums, and the 38 357s, but that's really what you're limited to. So the finish on these guns is really pretty mediocre. The finish is all right on the 442, 642 series, the Airweights, but then when you get into the scandium guns, that finish is really fragile. You're gonna get some major holster wear on those guns just by using them and carrying them. Expect that to happen. Now the stainless steel guns are obviously stainless steel guns. They don't have a really good luster or any crazy finish, but they're pretty durable. I don't have many scratches on mine. Brush it down with a cloth and some oil and everything looks great. One thing I do wish is that these guns had more of an old school charm. They do make the Model 36, which is a little more old school, but I'd like to see a gun with more modern features, like being hammerless and having better sights, that still had a good old classic finish. So now's the part where we get to the ugly. And this is the part I don't really like talking about as somebody who loves American firearms. But quality control is a major issue right now for Smith and Wesson, as it is for Taurus and Ruger and pretty much everybody out there making revolvers. The Ruger LCR series is a little more forgiving because they're modern revolvers designed to be made using modern manufacturing methods. The Smith and Wesson J-frame was designed decades ago at a time when gunsmiths were putting these guns together from start to finish. Now they've got just normal assembly line people putting these together with very little training. So it's not the same as it used to be. And like, I've got this 442, I bought this a week ago in my gun shop. They had 3 of these in there. 2 of them I refused to walk out the store with because they had such poor finishes. The trigger wasn't that great. And like, even this one has some random dings in random places that don't make any sense. It looks like a framer with a carpenter's hammer put this thing together, not a skilled gunsmith. So that's something that's really disappointed me about these guns. I hope that Smith & Wesson gets their act together in that, and if you buy one of these guns, just expect to have to test it out and make sure it functions before trusting your life to it. Hope you guys have found this video helpful. Remember, take charge and carry with confidence.